Well, welcome everyone to the first reading of Edgewater Reading Series. Season 2. If anyone who doesn't know, I took over from Gabby because our girl Gabby went to do amazing things in California, so she asked me to step in as coordinator, and I'm super happy to be here. Yeah. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ellen Dots. The people who love me call me Elle, Ellen T, Love, Mommy, all that good stuff. So I'll be your host for the series. I have a blog. It's called shortbreadandgravy.com. So if you ever want to see any of my work, you can see me there. What is Edgewater Reading Series? We are a wonderful platform for artists and writers here on Staten Island, locally, also in the city. And what we do is create a space for us to come and share our storytelling. There's nothing like sharing your own story. Right? We all have a narrative, and who's better to control it than us? So let's share together in telling a story if you don't mind. Anyone want to tell a story with me? Yes, y'all do. Thank you. There we go. So once upon a time, there was a wonderful guy named Jack. And Jack used to travel all across the land with his friend Douglas. And one day they went into a wonderful cafe. And in the cafe, there was all types of people, like a wonderful woman named Bernice, a wonderful man named Larry, this wonderful woman named Margaret, and they all were there to share stories. And Larry ordered, what did you order?
I don't know. Okay.
What were you drinking earlier?
Soda.
Okay, so Larry ordered a soda.
Be on the spot.
Yes, I will. Larry ordered a soda. What flavor?
Coke.
The Coke was magical. Every time he took a sip, he transformed into a
Green Monster, licensed by Marvel Comics.
oh, licensed by Marvel Comics. So he was making money too. He was rich.
Yeah, I was the Hulk. I guess I was the Hulk.
Yeah. Okay, he turned into the Hulk.
All right.
And when he turned into the Hulk, he
smashed buildings.
No, he danced.
What kind of building did he smash?
Petco.
Tall ones, short ones, corporate ones, private ones.
Where was the building?
Trump buildings.
And we all live happily ever after. Thank you. So our first read, well, the first person we're gonna have reading. What I was actually gonna do is put names in a cup and have you guys choose for yourself. That's what I was gonna do. But I'm gonna put my friend Bernice Green Fulford on the spot. She is a natural social worker with Staten Island roots. Nisi is a strong believer and advocate in the cultivation of knowledge, the power of social services, and the importance of family. Her writing is inspired by her life, her experiences, and her exploration into mental health. So, everybody give a round of applause.
She knew I wasn't ready.
I know. Sorry.
It's okay. All right. I have to breathe through this one. Excuse me. So once upon a time, there was a girl who loved dolls. Gretchen Heidi was the Cabbage Patch newborn she received as a gift during adolescence. Magic Nursery was her absolute favorite. This girl treated her dolls as though they were living beings. Real diapers, hand-me-down carriers, strollers, and swaddling. Yes, they were her babies. At age 11, her little cousin was born, and she thought, yay, I will learn to babysit and be the best big cousin he ever had. And she was. Then came nieces and nephews, followed by her godchildren, and even a great-nephew. Babysitting, mentoring, baby showers, birthday parties, baptisms. Like a former bridesmaid and later a bride, it was always an auntie or godmom and never a mommy. This sat on her mind and in her heart. Make no mistake about it, she loved all the kids as though they were her own. 2013 began her journey to parenthood. 3 fertility clinics, polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, polyps, fallopian tube removal. Thousands of dollars for donor samples and medications, saline ultrasounds, blood work, injections, hormones, physical pain, emotional roller coaster rides, canceled foster parenting, failed IUI and IVF cycles became her truth. She prayed and prayed, leaned on her support system and spouse, and in October 2017, it was finally her turn. The call came in around 11 a.m. from the IVF nurse. The blood work came back positive for pregnancy. She cried a river and thanked her fertility team and God. She couldn't breathe. She called her spouse and gave the awesome news, and she relished in the excitement. Then in December 2017, her dear baby was born, and so the mourning process began. She wrote, "Dear baby, we prayed for you and loved you greater than you will ever know. For the short time I carried you, please know that I had never felt better emotionally, mentally, or physically in my life. From the first ultrasound to noticeable remnants of you left behind, we still love you." To any woman who has experienced the loss of a child, no matter gestation or age, know that your baby or babies will embrace you when you make the transition from this earthly plane. There is no greater feeling than that of a woman who gets the opportunity to bear a child. I have continued to pray for and work toward having our dear baby. Blessings come to those who pray, trust, and wait. Dear baby, we pray for you, and every week that passes is a celebration for us. We can't wait to hold you #August 2018. Oh, that was hard. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Nisi. Because I've been through the journey with you, and I've watched you guys, and I'm so grateful and happy, and I can't wait to hold my little niece and nephew. I'm sorry.
That's how you get started.
Right. Larry, you ready?
No.
Okay, Larry, get ready. Larry is a Staten Island playwright who thrives on the theater experience. He has been producing theater for over 20 years. He is a resident playwright for the Manhattan Repertory Theater in NYC. He is best known on his ongoing project, Larry's Women, which I had the honor of being one of his women, which was amazing, which is a series of monologues with females. I'm sorry, let me read that over. Ongoing project, Larry's Women, a series of original female monologues, which has been seen in performances on Staten Island and in Manhattan. Larry.
Okay. I'm actually going to read two short pieces. A lot of people are like a little surprised when they find out I had worked on Wall Street for like 13 years prior to working in nonprofit. So I'm actually going to be reading two short overtime horror story pieces. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I'm using the one behind the scenes. So, all right. First one's called Trapped. Claude Perry looked at his watch. 8 o'clock. Darn it, he said out loud. It had been trying to solve a balancing problem on a spreadsheet. He promised his boss he would solve it. His desk and the two next to his was covered with ledgers, computer runs and pads, etc. Another half hour and that's it, he told himself. Soon 8:30 p.m. rolled around and still Claude couldn't get the answer. That's it, I've had enough, he said, slamming the ledger closed. He proceeded to straighten the mess out. He figured tomorrow's a new day, a fresh start will do it. I'll have a clear head then. Maybe I can figure out after a good night's sleep. After he straightened out the mess, Claude realized he was alone and he couldn't remember when they all left. He must have been really engrossed with the stupid problem. He shrugged his shoulders, grabbed his jacket, and went to the elevator. An eerie feeling came over him. It was strange being the only one left in the office. He pressed the elevator button. The elevator arrived in no time. And that's one thing about working late. You never have to wait for an elevator or get a crowded one. Claude looked at the watch. It was 9 o'clock. He hurried. He could catch the 9:15 PATH train. He got into the elevator. The doors closed. Claude pressed L for lobby. The elevator started to descend. 23, 22, 21, 20, 19. The elevator stopped. He pressed L a couple more times. It jerked and then started again. 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. It stopped again. He cursed and then pressed the lobby again. It didn't work this time. He pressed it again, once, twice, then 3 times. Claude then pressed the alarm. Nothing, darn it, he shouted in an angry tone. He paused and thought, it's only temporary. He walked to the back of the elevator and leaned against the wall, and he started to whistle. Somebody will come soon, somebody will come real soon, he thought. Then he crossed his arms. Claude saw the time on his watch. 9:30, oh, come on, this is not funny, he said out loud. Then he noticed the air had stopped. It seemed to get a lot warmer all of a sudden. Claude loosened his tie and removed his jacket. In a matter of seconds, panic started to take over. What if I'm stuck in here all night, he thought. The air, where's the air? I'm going to suffocate to death. He started breathing heavily. He ran to the door and started banging on it. Help! Help! Somebody help me! He screamed as he started banging. Exhaustion hit him after an hour. He just laid on the floor, still banging the door, covered in sweat. Claude finally looked at his watch. 10:30. This is ridiculous, he thought. He sat up. I'm a mature adult, he told himself. Everything will be fine, he assured himself. Besides, Liz would be worried. Liz is his wife. As he sat on the floor, he thought of all the good times he had, Liz and the kids used to have. He thought of the picnics and the amusement parks, and he remembered Sally, his youngest, was so afraid of roller coasters and how he made her go on it with him. Claude wanted Sally to get over her fear. Fear is not a good thing to have, was always his belief. After her first ride, Sally loved it. Now you can never get her off the roller coaster. I guess if my little Sally can do it, I can, Claude announced out loud. He stood up and fixed his clothes. It was now 11:30, and Claude had been pacing back and forth like a tiger. Every time he looked at his watch, he got more angrier. I want out. I can't take any more of this crap, he thought. He kicked the door. He hurt his foot. Claude jumped around, holding his foot, cursing. He sat down and took off his shoe to make sure that his foot wasn't broken. He looked around the elevator. Oh, God, why me? He asked out loud. Tears started to form. I want to go home, please, Claude asked the elevator. By 1 a.m., fear started to form again. Fear that he may never see his family Fear that he may never see his family stuck in headlines would read. Overtime kills man. Overtime, is it worth it? Claude felt the walls start to move in on him. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't breathe all of a sudden. He took off his tie and unbuttoned his collar again. He started to breathe heavily. Claude couldn't catch his breath. He fell against the wall. He was frantic. He ran to the door and he started to bang on it. I can't breathe, he shouted at the door. Claude was about to give up. I'm going to die, he thought. Frantically, he started to bang on the door, screaming, I don't want to die. I don't want to die this way. Then a miracle happened. The elevator jerked and started to move. The air was on. The numbers started to change. 13, 12, 11, 10, and finally lobby. The door opened and fresh air came in. A security guard came up to him. Are you all right, Mr. Perry? There was a brownout. Claude took a deep breath. A piece of cake, he lied and grabbed his jacket. And this is called, as it is, overtime. Okay. Maura looked at her watch. It was 6:15 p.m. Not believing her watch, she checked the clock on the wall. It was 6:15, and there was nothing she could do to change it. Maura was annoyed at her boss. Mr. Rogers decided at the last minute to make some major changes to a report. In addition, it had to be on the president's desk by 9 o'clock the following morning. Maura tried to decipher her boss's chicken scratch. Even after working for him for almost a year, she still had trouble understanding his scribbling. Maura wanted to make sure she understood all the changes before attempting it on her PC. As usual, Mr. Rogers pulled the routine about needing to be home by 5 o'clock to take care of his sick wife. Maura had met Mrs. Rogers about a week ago, and when she came into the office to pick up something from her husband, she didn't look sick at all. In fact, she looked as healthy as a horse. Maura sighed and shook her head, and she went back to deciphering her boss's writing. Do the best you can, shouted Mr. Rogers as he ran out the door at 4 o'clock. Maura growled at the memory. She looked at the clock again. Now it was 6:45. Maura picked up the phone and began to call her home number. She knew her husband John would be upset. She braced herself for John's anger. Rogers ought to consider himself lucky to have me as his secretary, she thought. Hello, John, it's me. I'm working late, Maura said quickly. John started yelling, telling her how inconsiderate Rogers was and how he'd better send her home in a cab. He then told her that she should quit. He made good money, so she didn't have to work. Maura reminded him that without the salary, they wouldn't have money for all those little extras they enjoy. She wasn't trying to belittle him. She was just needed to explain to him again why she was working. Then John asked her the one question she always dreaded. Is Rogers working late too? Yes, she lied. It took another 15 minutes to get John off the phone, and then she went back to her task of decoding. Mr. Rogers needed to learn to write clearer. She thought as she laughed at the thought of Mr. Rogers having her third grade teacher, Mrs. Romanowski. Mrs. Romanowski was a stickler for penmanship. Maura remembered how Mrs. Romanowski would keep kids after school practicing their penmanship. Practice makes perfect was her motto. Rogers probably would have never graduated from the 3rd grade with Mrs. Romanowski as his teacher. The thought of her boss in the third grade with Mrs. Romanowski standing over him made her laugh. Maura rubbed the back of her neck and stretched. She looked at the clock. Now it was 7:45. She was ready to make the changes on her PC. Maura looked around the office. It was quiet. It was too quiet. She was amazed how still everything was. All of a sudden, Maura got this feeling somebody was behind her. She turned around quickly, but saw no one. Too many horror movies, she told herself. Maura began to enter the changes on the PC. Maura continued to type this information into the computer. She suddenly stopped. She couldn't move. The feeling of being watched came over her again. She slowly scanned the floor, but again, there was no one around. Maura sighed and put her head in her hands. Shaking her head, she said out loud, "No more horror movies." All the horror movies of girls working late and being killed by mass slashers ran through her mind. The radio, she thought. A little music would be the trick. And then that thought, she pulled a small portable radio out of her desk and turned it on. Nothing. She didn't understand why it wasn't working. Then it hit her. She forgot to buy batteries. Maura realized how ridiculous she was letting those stupid movies play on her mind. She continued inputting the changes, and again she stopped. Then she shook her head no and continued again. She must have typed 3 more changes when she stopped again. She got up and looked around. "There's no one here," she yelled at herself. To fight the onslaughts of those thoughts of overtime killers, she tried to think happy thoughts. It didn't work. Last night's movie came into her mind. A young blonde secretary named Joni didn't realize she was being watched by a psychotic killer, and Maura remembered how the young blonde secretary refused to believe anyone was there, and she was killed. With that last thought, Maura picked up her letter opener and started to prowl around the office looking for the psychotic killer that waits in the dark to claim her as the next victim. After looking at the supply closet, she started to laugh out loud. How ridiculous she must have looked. Maura went back to her desk. It was now 8:45, and she figured another 15 minutes and she would be finished. And Maura didn't get too lax. After all, there was real stories of overtime killers. She started to finish the report, and what a great story this would have for a movie. Girl imagines mad slasher dies from fright. She chuckled to herself. Maura finished the changes and began to proofread it. The eerie feeling came over her again. She glanced around to make sure the letter opener was still close enough to grab. This time she knew it was real. Someone was behind her. She froze. I'm not going like Joni, she thought with that, and spun around, waiting for the letter opener. Luckily for the both of them, he was quicker than she was and jumped out of the way. Oh my God, I almost killed you, Maura said, feeling her heart in her throat. The janitor stood panic-stricken. That'll teach me to announce myself from now on, he said, still trying to catch his breath. You shouldn't sneak up on people like that, she said as her heart went back to the place it usually hangs out in. You're right. And you're right, said the now calm janitor. He apologized to her, waited until Maura finished, escorted her to a cab, waiting until she was safely inside. Maura sat in the cab relieved. She never told John what happened that night, and it was a long, long time before Maura did any overtime.
I don't know about you, but my overtime killers called taxes. We have a poet coming up. Jack, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone knows the rules for poetry, right? You hear something you like? All right, let them know you're here. Let them know you feel them. Jack Freeman is a poet and spoken word artist from Staten Island, New York. In 2005, he penned the book Serotonin Seeds. In 2008, he was the editor of the anthology Trails Through the Greenbelt. He penned the chapbooks Never Lick the Spoon in 2016 and Never Lick the Spoon in 2015 and Tobias in 2016, and co-authored the chapbook Offerings in 2018 with Jared Rich and Beth Green. Publications featuring his work spans from North America to Western Europe and Southeast India. Jack, you ready? Yeah, he busy.
Thank you, Ellen.
No, thank you.
Okay, before I read, I'm just going to do a couple of plugs. This is my book, Tobias. I am selling it for $10 a pop if you're interested to see me. Also, I am going to be, along with another reader who's going to be coming up later, Doug Calvo, we're going to be organizing what's it called? Oh yes, we're going to be organizing a fundraiser for an anthology based on Staten Island called Liberate the Verse. And it is going to be featuring 84 contributors, artists, and writers from around the world. So, January 19th at Doozer's Local Market and Cafe, or Cafe and Market, one of those. Okay, so either which way, both cafe and market are in the name of the business. So, we're going to get to some poems here. I got 3 of them. And we talk about stories. These all kind of like link to each other. So this is a story in and of itself. It's called PT. This first one is called PTSD. PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. prone to serious depression, pain that seldom dwindles, processing the same day, plaguing the soul, drowning, playing the sounds daily. Poor times seem definite, pessimism that seems deadly, perpetually torturous, strikingly demonic, passion terminated, seemingly destitute, pouring tears streaming down, perusing the sorrowful darkness, photographic, the static dimension, pass through Satan's doorway, past the sour diesel, prescribed 37 drugs, Pilsner, tequila, sangria, diazepam, parched, taste sullied, dry, pariah to society, derelict, prone to steady decline, praying that screams dissipate, prone to suicide, damned, primordial threat, safety diminished, peace threatened, seemingly dead, passion tranquilized, sudden demise, past the summit, dropping, plummeting, the soul deadens, praying that solitude dissolves. Broken. The world may never know. Transitions through time have made hearts harder, darker, and frail. One may never know when circumstances are unbeknown to he whose heart has not budged toward a sense of compassion. He wants to share, but doesn't know how. He is broken. He is a man who never was in combat, but felt like an army of one as a whole and not part of a unit. One may never know when the soul next to him on a train is one who has a damaged heart. The bystander may never understand that the pain they share is similar. Areas can be congested sometimes. It is the type of congestion this man may only wish upon noses caring about his information without giving a shit about him. Sometimes they are only screams. Some hear screams in the middle of an otherwise tranquil night. Sometimes they are screams only he senses. A lost relative, a lost friend, or a way back to security when a blanket is replaced by a gun. He may never know if it will ever be used or know the purpose of even owning one. He may never know if a bullet can replace a damaged valve and potentially attach itself to a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes bloodlines need transfusions. He needs a sign that he is not alone. He needs a potential to let go of grief. He desires to cry on a shoulder that is not attached to a highway. Sometimes stories are morose. Sometimes stories are a morass. And one may never give a damn about a temporary glance. Light needs to be borrowed, whether it burns a cigarette or brightens an outlook. He may never quit his addictions. He may never abandon the habits until the day he dies. He may never realize he metaphorically died ages ago. Some may never know if the person next to him attends Mass and needs more than a handshake. He could see it as a superficial gesture and would never think to share his true nature when clammy skin encases mammoths of mediocrity. The desire for happiness in his world, in some senses, is a dream in which cracks are inflicted on the metal pipe rather than through the esophagus. Like the pipe, he is fragile. He is a loner who hates being alone. But truth be told, some streets need attention. Some avenues of conversation are valued more than gold. Some boulevards are difficult to maneuver, and sometimes a fender feels like a fist. He has hesitated to reach out under the guise of never knowing the sense of sadness he might convey. He fears his heart may get arrested, as sometimes we face a crime when the heart is neglected. Sometimes the crime is punishable by death. He wants his heart to stay open without needing a scalpel or clamps, and the exact same pain threshold is exceeded, and proverbial morphine through veins is the only fix. I may never know. You may never know. He may never know, she may never know, it may never know, we may never know, they may never know. Who the fuck even really knows? Knowing why is half of the battle. Knowing how a broken man can heal is different. He can be fixed, but the cracks in his soul are still visible. They will always remain, and in this respect, he is not alone. Lonely people need to find one another, and perhaps they too experience excruciating anathema, and perhaps one of them is the person sitting next to him, and perhaps the entire population of a given train is like blood scattering within a cardiac membrane, and perhaps the line between the aorta and the jugular has been derailed. We suffer in silence. only to realize sooner rather than later that the feeling of loneliness is something we will always know. For when the world eventually ends, the documentation of loneliness will outlive the roaches, and at least those roaches will know how to form a community. This last one is called And the Sign Says. It starts out with a song. It was the 3rd of June, another sleepy, dusty Delta day. Hey, I was out chopping cotton and my brother was baling hay. And at dinner time we stopped and walked back to the house to eat. And Mama hollered out the back door, y'all remember to wipe your feet. And then she said, I got some news this morning from Choctaw Ridge. Today Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge. On the X10 crossing the Verrazano, I saw a sign that said life is worth living. Underneath the credo was the phone number for life and at the suicide prevention hotline provided by New York City. Scenery changes to underground where subway trains are electrified by the grid, where the edges of platforms need that same sign. I could have been a statistic. I could have hung upon the yellow circle with the black R like fuzzy dice, gambling with my life as if the train was a solitary bullet in the game of Russian roulette. Developments of subway casualties would be denoted in surveys, exposing blankets of trauma by both jumpers and strap hangers. Non-profit organizations might have commemorated my fatality anonymously in a bar graph had that attempt been complete. And many ignore that corny credo entering the hearts and minds of those wanting to intentionally transition between earth and ether. Now consider the Emerald Tablet, the doctrine of Hermetic alchemy. That which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above. Heaven and hell, bridges and tunnels, Eros and Thanatos, the blessed and the damned. A will to die is always greeted with an easy and accessible method, and a will to live comes with the complexity derived from avoiding said method. I think of Tennessee Williams' play, The Glass Menagerie, remembering how Tom Wingfield was terminated for splaying stanzas on shoeboxes, and I must follow suit in my quest to avoid fatality after 17 minutes pass and another suicide commences. The movies will maneuver my mind and manifest melodies. The moon will motivate my messages. Amid the cranial chaos, I need to be that selfish fucking dreamer. I need to dance with El Diablo in the catacombs of opium dens in Gehenna. But then, my family enters the forefront. The entropy expires. And the dead don't seem so lucky. But with the truth of certainty, and the certainty of truth, the sign that you should live should be in every place one chooses to die. Thank you. January 19th, Users Local. 7 p.m.
So Jack, you lied to me.
Did I?
Yes. I walked in, I gave you a hug, and I said, what a good hug. And you said, that's my superpower. Nah, poetry's your superpower.
Come secretary.
Margaret. Yeah. You ready? Yeah. All right. Margaret has worked in theater and in the nonprofit sector as an artist and fundraiser all of her life. Though she is sure that in a parallel life, she was a rock star or a race car driver. Did I get that right? Keep an eye out for her as she continues to boldly showcase art by disabled artists through Artists Undeterred, which provides a forum for dynamic artists who exemplify boldness and determination. She has worked with Davy Dada, did I say that right? Hub 17, ETG, Deep Tanks, Staten Island Out Loud, and SIPC, among other organizations. Let's give it up for Margaret.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody. All right, just see, I would like to just say that the originator of the Artists Undeterred project, which showcased the work of some 75 disabled artists, is Milanka Barankolk, my co-curator. And our exhibition reconfigurations at the new house just closed. It was a magnificent experience. Okay, onward. I'm going to share with you some observations and musings, and then I'm going to read a couple of poems. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. It can happen anywhere. In the drugstore, the bank, the supermarket, my bedroom, when I'm alone, or more frequently when there are people around. A soft, penetrating voice, gentle and even-keeled but firm, insinuates itself deeply into my ear. Battery low. Battery low. And with this message, I am warned that in anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, the hearing in my right ear will drop out, not completely, but significantly. But there's a kind of impartial compassion, a predictable steadiness in the well-modulated female voice that tells me, battery low. And there's a kind of a grace period that follows, during which, if I can locate a more or less flat surface, I can fairly quickly remove the hearing aid, switch the battery in its delicate swing-out case, close it, reinsert the hearing aid, and the world comes alive, sonically, again. If there's no such opportunity, I prepare myself for quiet surroundings and intensified lip reading. Now, not nearly so civilized is the forewarning on the left side, home of my cochlear implant, or CI. It's easy to lose track of where exactly I am in the window of 10 or so hours of battery life there. 5, piercing. Electronic beeps deep in my brain intrude suddenly. The rough equivalent of, "Hey, stupid!" The series of 5 beeps, why so strident? Why 5 when 2 would suffice? Will repeat itself for several long minutes, with just enough of a pause in between, something like the minute cessation between labor pangs, to cause the mind to falsely clutch at relief. Then, all at once, everything goes extremely quiet. Now, changing the batteries of the CI is considerably more of a production than the hearing aid. With CI batteries dead, the world now sounds... and the mind panics for a sliver of a second at the loss of sound and comprehension. And please let it not happen during Gott im Himmel, an important meeting. And please, please let it not be Gott im Himmel, a problem more complicated than batteries. The YouTube videos for troubleshooting the CI, that tiny tech titan that bridges me to the hearing world, invariably feature a calm, slender, well-groomed, and happy individual at home in a light-filled and clean country house. She leaves the game of, say, backgammon that she was playing with her equally attractive partner, and she casually removes the magnetized processor from her head with one hand. She sets it on the butcher block counter, where she sits elegantly at a high stool of blonde wood with a little smile. And not consulting either manual or YouTube, she proceeds to smoothly decouple the externally worn microphone, sound and speech processor, and transmitter.
Is it a transmitting coil problem? Oh, perhaps it's the coil cable. Perhaps the remote tuner is needed to test the multiple processor programs. Whatever the mystery, she coolly and dexterously manipulates the parts until the issue is identified and solved. And quite quickly, she's snuggled back into the game of the larger world. She is not me. A year and a half out from being implanted, my hands-on approach to the technology is still very gingerly. Now, my audiologist asked me at a session to fine-tune my channels. Yeah. How much time I thought I spent in any of the 3 auditory programs I can select to help me hear better in various environments. Oh, absolutely the majority of time in program 1, somewhat less in program 2, and program 3, hardly ever. She mused, shaking her head slightly as she gazed at the computer screen, and she proceeded to inform me with pinpoint accuracy of the precise percentage of time that I had used in each program since our last visit. There was something creepy about that. Really creepy. And can you tell me the exact geographic locations I was in when I used the different programs? I asked with a fakey chuckle. She did not laugh. No, it only tracks this information. Yeah, I thought. Now, I knew full well when I had the surgery that it was permanent, that I would be a metalhead for life and must embrace my new bionic self, Magneta. But being a cyborg does have its stranger moments, such as the first time I traveled internationally after the surgery. And though it's supposed to be perfectly fine to go through the magnetic screening booth at the airport, I decided to avoid it and sidestep any possibility, however remote, of scrambling the internal receiver or electrode array inside my head. I had my CI user ID card, but it's in English. Hence, I found myself enthusiastically and preemptively proclaiming to 3 security people, "Momento, por favor, yo tengo implanta en mi cabeza." For a moment, they stared at me, no doubt waiting for me to show them the accompanying antennas made of aluminum foil. But I slowly removed my external processor and displayed it in my open palm, and all proceeded smoothly after that. This new auditory landscape I occupy offers continual adventures in learning. Sometimes my brain seems able to hold more information, sometimes less. Could it be a question of battery low? Poems. Number 1. Heat, lightning pierces purple clouds, and New York Harbor sleeps. She sways her liquid hips and sighs beneath the eclipsed sky. Just here, just now, no madman's plots, no body parts, no rings flung to her deeps. Just here, just now, her breathing soft, glistening, she sleeps. Poem 2. Die, my heart. Or, shattered incoherent, teach what I must learn. I'm cruel to you and want you strong when I am not. This is the 95th time I've been stood up, and the fires shoot up and down the 93rd floor, the 97th. My heart races among them. Higher up, it chooses flight. Live, my heart. Live to laugh and fly. My sueded tears raise the nap, and then I'm rough again. Naked under my robe, I race barefoot through the flames and throw the towel in your face. Final poem. Entitled, Kathmandu is on my mind. A whole day we spent there, edgy monkeys nibbling fruit, eyed us shyly, then boldly. mother large and near. A day spent amid architecture circa 1920, most rococo, half restored, fortified by German marks. Bad Sauvignon Blanc in the Moorish niche, its lone pigeon pacing. Open-mouthed, heads back, we gazed at mirrored domes. Polishing wine goblets, the bartender said the place was nearly raised. Lotus, sculpture, wine and sun, roses, lovers, lawns and vines, turrets, secrets. Oh, my garden of dreams. I stood grinning at your gate, pinned by your gorgons, gorging on your flowers.
That was so good. I almost forgot to stand back up again. I was just sitting there. I'm like, yeah. So we have one more reader. Douglas Kalla. Douglas Kalla is a native Staten Island who broke into the spoken word poetry scene at the age of 15 at the former Muddy Cup Coffee House on Van Duzer. He characterizes his work as dramatic and fearless. Douglas employs an assertive and dramatic delivery style that is uncompromising in its impact and directness. His second love, besides writing and performing poetry and prose, is photography and videography, as he specializes in shooting other artists, including actors, fellow performance poets, and musicians. Thank you, Douglas.
Hey guys, how's it going? So I have to thank Jack for actually helping me to book this feature. He networked me with Ellen, and that helped me book it. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, because he and I go back to 2004, when I performed for the first time when I was 15 at the Muddy Cup. So we go back quite a while. All right, so this journey I'm taking you on is, just pretend these poems are interrelated, even though I wrote them separately. This particular one is called Aurora, and it is based on the Halo video game series for the Xbox. I tried to challenge myself writing something based on a video game, actually. So, check this out. It's called Aurora. Touching down on high mountain cliffs, despotic alien enemies to my right and to my left. Field of vision crowded behind your Spartan visor. Don't give in to the bombardment, the onslaught. You are the genetically engineered savior the world asked for. Awakened out of cryogenic sleep to face new and more dangerous threats. You have the power to lead those with low morale to keep the fight alive. And yet, beneath that hardened, battle-worn exterior, a pacifist might reside. You gunned down in a blaze of glory, only to continuously respawn, placed at random at a point on the map, not of your choosing, seemingly arbitrary. Your suit's shields can only protect you for so long without cracking like your mental state surely will. Your conditioning led you to believe that the Covenant were the ultimate foe, that the ring world must be defended, perhaps avenged with every breath. You take slow, deliberate steps, as every move you make is calculated, premeditated, like history's most notorious serial killers. Your ranking officer believes you different. Your cause noble. But is it really? Genocide is genocide, after all, regardless of who is pulling that trigger. This is now your final reappearance. You just pried a sniper rifle out of your deceased comrade's cold corpse. You look through the scope and identify an elite slicing through your brothers in arms with a plasma sword. The question arises, do you take the shot? All right, that's one. This one is basically a letter to my 15-year-old self. It's called Destiny as Poet. Exiting my mother's womb. Umbilical cord severed. Nourishment finalized. Born with brain chemical imbalance. Serotonin and dopamine receptors firing. What to name this newborn? A stab at carving out his identity. The middle name comes attached with a mission statement. Gill, not like the anatomical attributes of a fish or Gilligan's Island. Not like the name of a small village in Iran, for I was not born a Muslim, despite calling a good many of them friends and spirit brothers and sisters. For I am Gil, like the activist and poet Gil Scott Heron. For I am also Gil, like the name of a tropical storm pattern that gathers its momentum and swirls with the gale force winds of sandstorms and hurricanes. These revolutions will not be televised. I am the weather pattern that no meteorologist could predict, that no would-be prophet could possibly foresee coming. Before I arrive, you would need to batten down the hatches, perhaps construct fallout shelters, because rough weather is surely expected. Stock up on food, clothing, and other assorted supplies. Tend to the sick and the dying, and make sure to have auxiliary power available in case I cause a total blackout. As humans, we must prepare for difficulty and crisis. We must take precaution long before something detrimental occurs, before the bombs drop, before a plane's engine explodes resulting in mass casualties, before a raging totalitarian zealot releases nuclear launch codes, before a smear campaign is conducted by partisan newspapers to tarnish someone truly honest, before the performer's microphone becomes unplugged and his voice is unable to carry, unlike my own, before the strings of a violin or guitar snap, before that tone-deaf producer decides to add auto-tune to a songbird who has the voice of a canary, before humanity goes extinct from rising sea levels within the next 20 years, before the world's population goes from 8 billion to 10 billion, my feet greet the shoreline and touch down on pure sand. I become one with my element. All right, one more. So this one is called Oasis. I had to wander the desert valley until suddenly I stumbled upon my oasis, walking barefoot with scorpions nipping at my toes, injecting venom. That oasis seeming like a mountain summit I had just reached. I finally became the journeyman, wanting to seek out life and new civilization. I could not predict where I was headed, but I heard the call. Daring to capitalize on my dreams, however far-reaching and idealistic, perched on this shore, while coming equipped, always, with a writing implement. I cured my stutter. I tamed my unbalanced mind. I warded off the apparitions of my past, realizing time is now fleeting, charging ahead into the unknown. I used to embody the cursed Sisyphus, forced to roll that boulder up that hill, only for it to repeatedly flatten me. Dear Zeus, did I really need to make a pledge to undo some dastardly deeds? For good intentions can be objective, as I chant an ancient incantation before drifting off to a deep sleep. God, grant me the strength and conviction I need to persevere. Allow me to drink and bathe in 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Catalyze my body to fight disease and old age in stride. Allow my hair to turn to salt and pepper follicles, signifying a sort of distinction, if well earned. Nothing lost and something gained. I become whole for the first time. Yep. So I got to give myself a few plugs. As was mentioned, I'm a film critic and film TV reviewer, so you can find me at WordPress. It's Cala, like my last name, C-A-L-A, calacritic.wordpress.com. And if you want to find my photography, my videography stuff, that would be www.dcala, again, like my last name, dcalaproductions.com. I also have business cards and stuff if you want to come back and talk to me. So, all right, right on. Later.
So we're supposed to take a break, but we went right through. How's everybody doing? Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I must say thank you to NYSAI, Hub 17, and Eddie. If you're looking for a photographer, videographer, he's right here. He's very good. And I gotta put you in now. Sorry. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity, and I'm grateful to share it with you guys. I think for the first reading we did good. What you guys think?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward for you all to come back to the next one. It's going to be February. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be in February. The first Sunday, February 3rd. Well, thank you. My name is Ellen again, and thank you for being a part of the series. No, thank you. Thank you. Guys, please enjoy. We have some refreshments here. There's wine, there's water, there's cookies, there's crackers.